Hello, dear friends. I hope everyone is doing well. We're still expecting more people to join us, but ahlan wa sahlan, as we say. Welcome to you from another for another Kumi meeting this week from Jerusalem, Palestine. Thank you all for joining us today. Today we have an excellent speaker, like always with us, that we will introduce later on. So thank you for being with us, Yuad, and we will introduce you later on. But before we do the introductions, I want to welcome you to our latest Kumi online gathering as we address mental health needs in Palestine. Today we're joined by Yuad Ghanadri Hakim of the Palestinian Counseling Center and a member of multiple organizations and network. Before we start, I'd like to remind you that this session is being broadcasted live on Facebook, although not at the moment. If you do not wish to appear, please turn off your video feed. We would also love it if you could share the link with friends or other friends of Sabil members that you are aware of. So, dear Yuad, it has been a tradition at Sabil that we ask each speaker to introduce herself or himself. So we'd like to stick with this tradition. So could you please introduce yourself, Yuad?
Masal Khair, greetings all from Jerusalem. I'm really glad being with you this evening. I know that you have joined us from different areas and countries. So I really appreciate your patience in attending this activity. I have been a clinical psychologist along more than 25 years now. Originally, I'm from Nazareth. I was based in Nazareth, but have been living in Jerusalem for 20 years. I'm the mother of 3 beautiful children, and I'm trying, as all other Palestinians, to combine my roles as a human being, social activist, mother, and a professional in a country that is deeply wounded, let's say that. I'm a therapist at the Palestinian Counseling Center, and as well I'm the head of the Arab Psychological Union in Israel, and I'm an establishing member and board member of what I will explain later, what we call the Global Mental Health Network, Global Palestinian Mental Health Network. I was asked by Sabil to start describing mental health situation in Palestine, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I thought about maybe speaking around 15 minutes, a little bit more, maybe maximum, and then give you the opportunity to ask questions, and I'll try to answer your needs. I hope that I will succeed in that. Before I start talking about mental health, I want to draw your attention that while we are speaking this evening, 20,000 people, Palestinian people in Shafat refugee camp, are held as hostages, locked down in their refugee camp by the Israeli forces under the claim that Israel is searching for a Palestinian youngster that was claimed to make an attack against Israeli occupying forces. So 20,000 people are kept in what we call a collective punishment for the 3rd day now. And, you know, life should go as if nothing happened. And not next to me, 15 minutes, is this refugee camp, and people are kept there in a kind of a prison. No one to enter, no one to go out. University students, school students, doctors, nurses, professionals, bus drivers, no one can enter, no one can go out. And when I think about what's happening today, I remind us all that Gaza has been under a blockage for more than 15 years now. 2 million people are living in Gaza, and they are controlled by Israeli military forces, occupying forces, because Israel control actually the land, the sky, and the sea. And when we want to talk about mental health in Palestine, we can't ignore the context. The context which Palestinian people live in and are expected to grow in and to adapt to. So sometimes I ask myself whether it's people that have pathologies or that the context is a pathologizing a context. And in general, we as Palestinian professionals, we object the medicalization of Palestinian people or medicalization of the political context. We don't need therapy to people. My people need justice, actually. And the actual cure of the Palestinian people is to be liberated from this colonial occupation that has been going on for 73 and more years now. I'm telling you that because along 25 years, I have been working with people, individuals, couples, groups, children, adults, and me myself, I have been wounded psychologically by this context. But it would be very wrong to look at my people without looking at the context in which my people live in. And many of the abnormalities we see are abnormalities of the context. So people might be reacting in a normal way for an abnormal situation. So whether we want it or not, the context is abnormal. And this context is what we ask the international community to stand against and work to change. In terms of mental health, actually, we Palestinian, as any other country in the world, we have mental health problems. We have anxiety, we have mood disorders, we have personality disorders, we have stress-related disorders. But actually, the statistics are in continuous raise, actually. But when we compare what is expected in terms of PTSD, or what we call post-traumatic stress disorder, my people don't have that much of PTSD as literature might expect. The question is, what is happening here? Is there overrating of this term? Or why, if there are some percentage of people that suffer from PTSD, but the vast majority actually don't? So what happens to these Palestinians? What enables these Palestinians not to suffer from PTSD? What are the narratives of recovery that they have and resiliency that enable them to stay resilient to such a traumatic situation. And one of the explanations that we have, that in Palestine, we are not post anything. It's not post-traumatic stress disorder because we are not post occupation, we are not post-colonization, we are not post-trauma. The trauma is cumulative, continuous, has been going on from generation to generation. So the term itself, post, is a wrong term, and we call the international community to look at this term in more critical lenses to enable us all to capture the complexity of the political situation and the mental health situation in Palestine in a different way. Another point that I would like to highlight is that we believe that colonization and occupation power is targeting more than land and sky or buildings. Colonization is targeting the infrastructure of the community. Colonization is targeting the psyche of people, aiming at destroying the social structures that our people stand on, the family structures, and the resiliency structures of ours. And we think that hundreds of children that were killed during this occupation, thousands of adults killed are not bilateral damage, but it's actually the end goal of this occupation. So we believe as psychologists that the occupying forces are maiming or trying to maim new generations by creating a generation that is what Fanon said, half a life and half a death. So we as professionals, we are all the time actively working against this maiming policy. It's not a bilateral damage or a mistake, it's a policy to maim our generation. And examples of this is the unchilding policy that maybe one of our most famous indigenous researchers talk about, Professor Nadira Kofurkian. She talked about the unchilding of Palestinian children. It's a policy of Israel to hold our children as the dangerous other, and to construct Palestinian children as a dangerous other. And you know, children are the capital of any future nation. So by targeting these children and by maiming these children, they aim at maiming our Palestinian future. On the other hand, we see that Palestinians are still resisting 73 years after. Palestinian people, though wounded, I don't ignore the trauma, but they continue to have life, to resist, to marry, to have children, to go to maybe universities, cinema, and to live their lives. So this, we have power and vitality and will to live our lives. And that's why, as a psychologist, we decided, as mental health workers actually, we decided not to work individually, but actually to establish in it where a Palestinian mental health worker, regardless of our geographical areas, We work together, we think together, we plan together our interventions, because resiliency actually requires a collective responses. So nowadays, since 2019, we established the Palestinian Global Mental Health Network, a mental health worker from Palestine, from Europe, United States, inside the area of Israel, inside Gaza, Africa, elsewhere, the Arab world. We are working together in order to use and utilize liberation psychology when dealing with our people. Before I continue to your questions, I want to highlight two very important facts regarding Palestine. We have two tragically and very severe policies done by the racial state. One of these policies is the house demolitions. You know, tons of houses are being demolished on a monthly basis by the occupying power. And you know, when you sit in your houses, I can see now from the photos the colors of your walls, the beautiful pictures, the pictures of your children. And you know, the house or home is much more than just walls. Home is the place where our dreams are constructed. It's the place where we feel secure and we feel belonging. And by continuing this policy of demolishing Palestinian houses, Israel is continuing its colonial inspiration to maim Palestinian people and the feeling of belonging and security. And the other policy is the policy of capturing or prisoning our people. Since 1967, 700,000 Palestinians have been in prison, in Israeli prison. We're talking about 1/5 of the Palestinian nation. 1/5 of my people have been in Israeli prisons. I think it's the statistics are in themselves terrifying statistics and can tell you what is going on the ground. One of the most painful examples of the statistics, you know, because we don't, it's wrong just to talk about numbers, though numbers are terrifying. I want to bring up the one prisoner case. It's the Ahmed Manasra, a Palestinian who was detained when he was just a child. He's a Palestinian child from Jerusalem. He was 13, detained to 12 years in prison. Later on, the detainment went to 9 years. Ahmad's mental health situation deteriorated badly during the last years. You know, it's very normal that when you detain a child that has been going to school in his 6th grade to 9 years in prison, you don't just take their childhood and teenage years, you take many things of their lives. And Ahmad, not only his mental health deteriorated, but also in the last year, he was kept in solitary confinement. Though mentally challenged, the Israeli prison refused all our requests to release him. And according to international law, keeping a person beyond 15 days in solitary confinement is a war crime according to the international law. And now Ahmed has been continuously in solitary confinement for 9 months without any positive response from the capturing forces, which are Israel. So whenever we want to, and I'm calling from this stage that we all work together in order to release this child. He has parents, he has family, and he has a life to live. And this is a humanitarian call and professional call, and I think it's a legal call that Israel is not respecting. So I choose to stop now in this point and to give you the opportunity to maybe ask things that you think are important for you.
Thank you very much, Yuad. I mean, I have to confess, we very much as a Palestinian society, or myself, or at least the community, we don't talk very much openly about mental health, although it's a serious issue around the world, but also specifically for the people living under military occupation for generations. So I want to ask you, I know you've addressed it, but more specifically, how welcoming or how open is the Palestinian society to issues of mental health in general?
Okay. I think the Palestinian society is very much welcoming and contrast to what we think. I have been working 25 years in different Palestinian organizations, and these organizations are offering mental health services. And you know, people don't like to pathologize them. That's why sometimes they don't address professionals. But still, in all the clinics that I have been active, and the Palestinian mental health, Palestinian Counseling Center, that it's a Palestinian NGO established 38 years ago. The waiting list is very long. All the clinics of the UNRWA, the United Nations, all the clinics of the Palestinian mental health ministry. So maybe people don't like to talk about it publicly, but our people want to feel healthy. And sometimes they address mental health workers, other times they address more traditional counselors, also religious counselors or family counselors, but I see no stereotypes actually against mental health if you know how to address the issue in a respectful way that doesn't pathologize, that doesn't only pathologize people. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
But in terms of maybe services, maybe I can highlight or address this issue that in all the world, not only in Palestine, mental health services are the less lucky services in terms of funding and in terms of human resources. But it's not related to Palestine only. It's a worldwide phenomena that even the Ministry of Health fund mental health the least. And that's why World Health Organization, the WHO, called for better funding for mental health issues.
When you deal and react with colleagues abroad within the same sector or profession, How do they react when they hear about the Palestinian situation or our realities?
It differs, you know. Some react, some don't. I think that information about what is happening in Palestine now is very much widespread through social media. And usually we get so much solidarity of people, of international bodies. But I think what is needed is more than a solidarity. Palestinian people are calling for maybe actions that each of us need to take action and active steps in order to promote liberation ideas. You know, what is happening in Palestine, it's not a question of Palestine only. It's a question of human rights. It's not a question of Palestinian rights.
We have a question more about specific for the children, for Palestinian children that have been detained or suffered extreme conditions. I mean, whether being arrested or violence from the Israeli soldiers. How do you work with them?
In case they are released, you know.
Yes.
Because Ahmad Manatra, for example, and other hundreds of Palestinian children are not released yet. We are talking about between 500 and 700 Palestinian children on yearly basis are kept in Israeli detention centers or prisons, according to DCI. Defense for Children International. So we are talking about huge numbers. And one of the new policies also of Israel is what we call the house detention, where children are asked to be kept in their homes while their parents are asked to be their catchers. So we think this is a total crime, you know, because the role of the parents are changed from being a loving parents to being a capturing parents, and the house that, or the home that should be a place for security and feeling safe becomes a place, becomes their prison. So this is what I call the psychological maiming and psychological targeting of the psychological infrastructure of Palestinians. We actually address these children. We help them through their parents and sometimes directly, not to feel alone. As much as possible, we do psychoeducation of what they have what they went through, and we give legitimacy to their wounds and to their pain. Because usually when children are released, sometimes the community expects them to become heroes. But you know, children are children. Children want to, even after prison, children want to play, hide and seek. Children want to play Monopoly. Children want to do some sports. So we do some psychoeducation for the community, for the parents, not to treat them only as heroes, but to remember they are children. We support activation, and whenever we see signs of mental health problematic issues, we refer them to individual or group therapy. And we believe very much actually in group therapy, because when a child meets other children that went through the same experience, one is learn from the other to be courageous and to talk and to share their painful experiences together.
So when people are under arrest, especially children or Palestinian prisoners are under arrest, do they have access to their parents, siblings, or even health care?
Very, very much limited. It's a legal question, actually, Omar, and it's according to the Israeli military laws. But we, as Palestinian mental health workers, we can't enter the prison. We can't offer any help for our detained prisoners, Palestinian prisoners. So we don't have access. Even in the case of Ahmad Manasra, we have been working with many international bodies like Doctors Without Borders and Doctors for Human Rights in order to enable a Palestinian psychiatrist to go in the prison and to check what is going on with this child that has been in solitary confinement for around 9 months. And only after 2 years, we succeeded in entering one of our Palestinian psychiatrists in an Israeli prison. So we don't have any access in these prisons. And what we know that Palestinian prisoners experience torture, at least psychological torture.
So during the period of interrogation, there is no health care or mental health. But even after when Palestinian prisoners are sentenced, there is still no access to.
Of course not. We as Palestinians are forbidden to have any contact with Palestinian prisoners inside Israeli prisons. And what we want to call is not to enable us enter and offer help to our Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons, but we call for the abolishment of the Israeli prisons, actually. And we think it's against international law that 1/5 of our people have experienced these detention centers.
And when the families are, sorry, there's so many questions coming on the same topic. So when a child is arrested from the family, at least you can have access to the mother, to the siblings.
Of course not. I'm a little bit. Maybe people don't know enough, but I call from this stage to go to the DCI websites and to see how our Palestinian children are taken from their homes. Usually detention and arrest happens in the mid of night while children are asleep, so that to be terrorized more. And most of the questioning of children happens before they are allocated with a lawyer and without a company of their parents. But
I think the question is like so the army goes and breaks into a house, arrests a child. A part of the child being, of course, need of mental health or support. The family also suffers. The family who are in the village or in the refugee camp or in the city. Are you able to provide support to the families that they have some of their children being arrested?
Yes, but not enough in order to be. It's never enough because the numbers are huge. You can't reach everyone. That's why we work upon supporting resiliency and supporting local organizations and local structures so that families can help each other and support each other. Sorry.
So to my understanding, that there are a number of organizations. For example, somebody is asking that the YMCA has a reintegration program for children released from prison. I don't know if you're aware of this. No. You are on mute. Sorry. Yeah.
I was muted by your side.
Sorry.
Sorry. So there are a number of local organizations, you know, the Palestinian Counseling Center, the DCI, also the YMCA, and many other organizations. We try to divide geographical areas between us so that we reach out these families, and we offer them emergency interventions or ongoing interventions. But again, it's never enough. As long as this occupation and colonization goes on, our resources are never enough. And we now focus more on supporting the community so that the community itself become more resilient and families themselves offer help to each other.
So somebody is asking that it's very difficult to live to be in Jerusalem, West Bank, or Gaza, and not to be exposed to the Israeli violence, even on a daily basis. So does this impact, if I understand the question right, does this impact how, why people might be afraid of strangers or foreigners? Or even the community, how we deal with each other? Does it reflect on our community? So that's the question. I don't know if I understand.
Yeah. I don't think that Palestinians are more afraid of strangers more than any other country in the world. You know, we're normal people, but does this militarization of the public areas affect our children, affect ourselves? Of course. If I'm going to pick my children from school and I hear and I see Israeli forces, of course it will affect me. Of course it will affect my mental health. But as long as I know that it's part of the occupying unfair forces against my people, it might give me more ability to respond and to be resilient. In Palestine, we live trauma and recovery together. We have narratives of trauma and narratives of healing going on together day by day by day by day. And I think that sometimes people are very much, the international community are very much interested in the Palestinian people mental health. And I think it's about time to become interested in the mental health of the occupier forces. Why are they doing what they do? How they, as human beings, became so cruel in replicating history and causing suffering for another nation. But of course, we as mental health professionals, we are part of our people and we are part of this psychological wounding that is going on.
In some of the communities that suffer a lot of stress and pressure from structured violence, you find sometimes drugs appear in these communities or community on the community violence. Does this happen in Palestine?
Yes, of course. And let's agree first that when I'm talking about Palestine, I'm talking about historical Palestine, okay? So Nazareth, Haifa, and Akko, areas of inside Israel, in my mind, in my heart, are Palestine as well. And what we see in these areas is very high level of aggression, community aggression. But I always remember that how Palestinians get these weapons, for example, who encourage Palestinians to use these weapons against these others, each other. The country that is occupying is the country with the force. They have the power to collect weapons. They have the power to stop violence. But as I said before, there is an end goal to maim Palestinian people. And the best way to maim Palestinian people is to destroy the social infrastructure of Palestinians. That's why when there are weapons or killings between Palestinians and each other, the Israeli forces don't actually do their duty. Not at all, actually. They encourage, actually, this aggression.
We have a question I have heard. A question says, I have heard on Zoom 2 different reports about people in Gaza. One Zoom said there is a huge mental anxiety among Gazans, never knowing when they will be bombed. The other Zoom said that many Gazans feel strong, that they will not, as a people, be downed by Israel. So what is more accurate? Are the people of Gaza strong, or they feel down and afraid?
Yes. It's an important question, but what does any answer make a difference? Actually, the most accurate fact that we can say that Gaza, 2 million people are being in lockdown for more than 15 years. This is the most accurate fact that we have to look at, that Israeli forces are bombing Gaza whenever they want. And why? Because they can, because no one stops them. So I ask you all to focus more on the occupying power and what this occupying power do. But if I want to answer your question, it's not either or. It's not either I'm anxious or I'm strong. I can be anxious at time of war, and still I am strong in my vitality and willing to live my life. People, it's like love and hate. It's never once against the other. Sometimes you can love and hate at the same times. So people in Gaza have the same will of any other people, nation in the world to live their life. And they have the right to live their life to its full. But 4 or 5 wars against Gaza in the last 20 years made a very huge prices, left very huge prices upon people. And you know what? Let's the war end, let's the occupation stop, and we will heal our people. We will recover. But let's agree first that this occupation must stop, and then we will deal with the anxiety.
People are aware of the occupation, but very few realize the psychological effects on whole families. What is being done about that? Awareness on the international level on the psychological effects.
What is being done on the international levels regarding the Palestinian people?
Regarding raising awareness of the psychological effects on the entire family.
Yes, actually, we at the Palestinian Global Mental Health Network, we are very much active on the international stages, different international stages. We have many friends. We have the British Palestinian Mental Health Network, African Palestinian Mental Health Network, USA Palestinian, and you know, we have different kind of mental health networks that we are collaborating with. And we're trying all the time to raise awareness about the injustice that is going on since 73 years in my country. But you know, little is done on terms of actual pressure upon the European and the international governments to hold the occupying forces accountable on their crimes. As I said before, we hear lots of solidarity, but less action that this cause really asks for.
We have a request for somebody who's asking. Could you tell us again the story, or remind some of the people about the story of Ahmad?
Ahmad Manasra was a 13 years old boy in his 7th grade in Jerusalem, and he was accused of committing what they call an attack on Israelis, but actually he was never confined in that attack. Like he was accused for his will to make this attack. And there were many videos 9 years ago showing this, or 7 years ago, showing this child bleeding in the street with a head injury and cursed by bystanders about being a Palestinian. He was confined by the terror law, though the terror law doesn't, the terror law in Israel is a law that should be only children or only young above the age of 14 should be accused according to this law. But the law was amended so that they can accuse Ahmad. And he went to the prison in that age, and he has been in that prison for 7 years now. And 2 or 3 years ago, his mental health deteriorated seriously. And he started suffering from a serious mental health problems because he was kept for very long periods in solitary confinement, or against the international law that limits solitary confinement till to 15 days. I call you all to go to the website of the Palestinian Global Mental Health Network so that you can read more about the campaign to free Ahmad Manasra. We had a petition to free Ahmad Manasra with more than 500,000 people signing this petition, but you know the Israeli court didn't take that into account. Ahmad Manasra is still in prison, and we are still trying to help him be released and go back to his family and community, because we don't believe that the same occupier forces can also cure you. The people that made you sick can't make you cured. So recovery of any Palestinian child, including Ahmad Manasra, can happen only if the conditions of ethical mental health services are provided. Maybe Omar, later I can send you the petition link and some more information about Ahmad Manasra, and I really appreciate that you help us in this cause, and we call for the free of Ahmad Manasra.
Yes, there is a petition that has been going on since March, and it has reached thousands, tens of thousands of signatures. We'd like you to hundreds of thousands, and we'd like you to circulate it. If you haven't already signed it, we've already sent it out in a previous email, but I'm sure if you haven't seen it, please do sign it and share it with other friends. We have a question: can Defense of Children International still work in Palestine, DCI? Hasn't Israel declared it as a terrorist organization?
Yes, Israel has declared, each 2 weeks they declare more and more international bodies as terrorist organizations. And it's amazing that state terror and the racial state is calling other international bodies as a terrorist bodies. The bodies that offer mental health services, offer therapy, call for human rights, equal human rights, the bodies that call for justice are the bodies that are accused of becoming a terrorist organization. But we never rely on the judgment of any colonizer forces to say who is terrorist and who is not. And by now, I think also the international community knows very well how to define terrorism.
With speaking about terrorism, earlier this month, a 7-year-old boy died from a heart attack, scared to death, as he watched Israeli soldiers attempt to arrest his 2 brothers. So there is, real terrorism from the state of Israel. Is there any legal actions that is taken, like for example, in the case of Ryan, who died out of fear from the Israeli army?
I believe there are. I'm a psychologist. I suggest that you call more people from the legal system to answer more accurate about these questions. I believe there are many actions, but since the beginning of the year, I think more than 100 Palestinians have been killed.
In the West Bank alone, yes, over 107 in the West Bank alone.
And the year is not to end yet, and we are not in any intifada, uprising, or a war. It's killing. It's a daily practice of the occupying forces. So the Ryan is it's very heartbreaking. This child. Actual death of he died because of fear. It's very emotional and it's heartbreaking, but 70% of the killings are for civilians, where Palestinians are not killed during any military interaction. Civilians are being killed on a daily basis. So I think there are actions taken, but the international community and no one is following on what is happening.
It's impossible to follow up on all of the questions, Yuad, but I want to ask you, is there like a success story or a story that has made you feel very uplifting that you've experienced from this year, from your work?
Every Palestinian that stands still and know to celebrate life is an uplifting story. Each Palestinian that choose life and insist of continuing to live life in its full mode is an uplifting story. Any Palestinian any child that go to school and continue even after they are being chased by Israeli soldiers is an uplifting story, every mother that continue to feed her children with love and resilience is an uplifting stories. And you know, Palestine is a place where people also, it's a place of love. And you can, if you come to Palestine, you see that people also know to celebrate. So trauma and recovery is going on together. And we believe that resistance, any kind of resistance, is legitimate and it's healthy. And people choosing to continue is an uplifting story. Each day that I choose for my children to continue live in Jerusalem and to enjoy life to its max and to stick to our principles is an uplifting story.
Thank you very much, Yuad. The hour has passed very fast. I want to thank you for the time with us and also for the beautiful way that you're ending this meeting. Actually, with the resistance, resistance is the way. Next week, we're going to speak about BDS, how to challenge the occupation using economic measures. But for this week on mental health, it has been a privilege having you with us, Yuad. Please do share anything with us on our emails that you'd like us to share. Definitely the campaign for Ahmad Manasra. There's so many stories that are heartbreaking, like the story of Ryan, a 7-year-old kid who gets a heart attack out of fear. Living under occupation is not easy. We have many beautiful stories of resilience, but they're all very costly. So we appreciate your solidarity, friends, with us, and thank you for being faithful, and see you next week, inshallah. Thank you, Yuad.
Thank you all. Shukran كتير. Take care.
Take care. Take care.